What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Ernie, Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. All right, today's video, we are going to be talking about Hardware, Season 1, Number 3 and 4 by Brandon Thomas and Dennis Cowan. And in this video, we are going to talk about some of the themes going on within the last couple of issues of Hardware, namely the theme of white fragility and how Brandon Thomas and Dennis Cowan are depicting the way white people in power respond to defiant, powerful black women, and just as well, the return of Hardware's original first nemesis. We're going to talk about all this and more right now, but first, if you want to see more awesome videos like this one, hit that subscribe button. I post multiple videos throughout the week, plus live stream the Blerd Cave every Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. So hit that bell button. That way you don't miss anything. With that out of the way, let's talk about Hardware Season 1, Number 3 and 4.
You can't see me, you Stevie, wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
Curtis Metcalf has been outed as Hardware. The entire world knows that he is supposedly the one who kicked off the Big Bang that, for all intents and purposes, caused a lot of people in the black and brown communities to either die or be irreparably transformed into either superheroes, supervillains, or monsters. You take your pick. And right now, the world needs someone to blame. And right now, Curtis has no one on his side. Now, in the previous video that we did for Hardware Season 1, Number 2, we talked about how Curtis had to rely on the women in his life to help him because right now he has no one else. He's having to reach out to his former lover, Baraki Young, who was his main love interest in the original Milestone Media comics, who never really got anything to do of any consequence. She was mostly just kind of there to be Curtis's rock and, keep him grounded, to be the person who he comes home to and helps him feel like he's doing the right thing. He also has Tiffany Evans, who Edwin Alva has realized has openly defied him, and he is now trying to frame her as being a part of this whole Curtis Metcalf kicking off the Big Bang debacle. And Tiffany Evans is yet another character that we talked about, who is also from the original Milestone Media Hardware series, whereas in that series, she was not a love interest for Curtis Metcalf. She was someone who originally operated as one of his villains, who then later turned into one of his rivals, and then eventually one of his allies. Whereas in this series, she starts off as exactly that, where she is not already the character Technique. She has not gone in that direction yet. She doesn't have a suit of her own. She doesn't have any special powers or abilities yet. However, they have changed something here in that Tiffany is dating Curtis, and he has his current girlfriend and his ex-girlfriend working to get him out of the fire. There's some really interesting commentary between the two. The fact that while both of them have feelings for Curtis Metcalf, they don't really necessarily try to put them at odds with one another. The situation is definitely uncomfortable between them, but they're both being, for the most part, very mature about everything that's about to go down. Because at the end of the day, what they are about to do is they're going to put Edwin Alva on blast. Edwin Alva has played a very sly game of trying to act like he supports Curtis in this and that he's trying to exonerate him, even though deep down we know he's not really trying to do that. He does actually know that Curtis isn't responsible for the Big Bang. He knows that he himself was responsible for it, but he is not going to say that out loud. And while, he is trying to act like he's backing Curtis, he's not actually doing it at all. And Baraki and Tiffany are going to hold him to task for that. While Edwin Alva is out here doing all this dirt and all of his secrets have yet to be laid bare, Edwin feels like he's untouchable. And the fact that Tiffany knows even the little bit that she does about what's going on between him and Curtis is making him incredibly uneasy. To the point that when Tiffany and Baraki hold a press conference, name dropping Edwin Alva, putting his name out there as the person who's behind this whole thing, the one who set Curtis Metcalf up in the first place, and then asking for Edwin Alva to actively do something about this and to get Curtis's name cleared. This has put him in an actionable position because, for one, he is a white man who has a lot of power, he has a lot of money, he has everything that he could possibly want, and he doesn't feel like anyone should be able to challenge him. We've seen this, and I know I, for one, have definitely seen this in the real world myself. And I won't even just single out white people. People in general who have a lot of wealth and power, they feel like they're untouchable, and when they feel like someone has hit them close to home, they take it in a way that is not the same same as how everybody else takes it. And it's made even more clear when Edwin Alva finds out what they've done, that they've name dropped him, that they dragged him into this, that they've dragged his name through the mud. He simply reaches into one of his safes, picks up a phone, and dials up someone to come and handle the problem, an assassin of sorts who he's gonna send after Tiffany Evans and Baraki. And he even makes it clear that he wants them to suffer, that he wants to harm them in all the worst ways humanly possible, because as someone says later towards the end of this book, that is a rich white man who just got straight embarrassed on national television by two smart, beautiful, and enormously talented sisters. Ain't no telling what he'll do next, and he's not wrong, because what he has done is he has hired one of Hardware's original villains from the OG Milestone series. Some of you may or may not be familiar with the villain Riprise. He was the first character that Hardware ever did battle with in the Milestone media comics. A guy who is, for all intents and purposes, is the Punisher meets Jamie Madrox, the Multiple Man. It's a gross oversimplification of this guy's powers, but he can make multiple copies of himself, and he is a hardcore government-trained assassin for hire who has no qualms about killing innocent women who have really not done anything wrong other than speak truth to power. Now, I don't know where this particular aspect of this is gonna go, because at this point, Tiffany Evans is not the person who she was in the original comics, someone who was able to don a set of Hardware's armor and just set it off, taking it straight to Hardware with main character energy. She's not that person yet, and honestly, I almost kind of feel like Milestone, I wonder if they're gonna pull a swerve where instead of having Tiffany Evans be the one to become Technique, part of me wonders if Baraki might get that honor instead, or maybe get something very similar. That said, Baraki and Tiffany have enough to deal with. Not only are they dealing with that, but you can also tell there's some stuff going on brewing under the surface with Tiffany. She's not comfortable being in the spotlight like this because Baraki, for one, she is the one who's basically doing all the talking for this, but Tiffany is the face. And right now she doesn't feel comfortable talking about a lot of these things. And now she has basically been associated with Baraki's words, and now she has a target on her back. And it's very interesting to see how Brandon Thomas is playing this one out. I'm really into it. The other thing that I definitely want to talk about as well is what's going on with Hardware, and the thing that they're doing this time around to differentiate this version of Hardware from the previous version. Now, in the original Milestone series, Hardware was technically kind of like the Iron Man / Batman of that universe. He was the guy who basically kind of knew what was going on out there in the world. He knew about just about everything. He was always up to speed on things going on in Dakota. He also knew about all the other heroes and metahumans, bang babies, whatever you want to call them. He knew about a lot of that stuff that was going on, and he always kind of seemed to have a plan or, something to say as an answer to just about everything. But one of the things I always thought was weird about the original OG Milestone series was that Curtis Metcalf took technology that was from Edwin Alva, and as I've said before in previous videos for Hardware, Alva seemed to just kind of be for this guy who's supposed to be this mastermind criminal operating the shadows who's so good at his job, no one knows that this guy who's basically Bruce Wayne, like an older version of Bruce Wayne out here in the world, no one knows that he's up to some shady shit. But in that original series, Edwin Alva had no clue that Curtis Metcalf was Hardware, and this guy was running around using his tech. In this series, Edwin Alva knows better. However, I also thought it was more interesting that they made it to where Curtis actually did something incredibly smart in this version of the series. Now, not to say he didn't do something similar when he upgraded his armor in the OG Milestone media series, but in this one, he's doing it almost automatically. Yeah, he's using the tech that Edwin Alva has supplied to him to create the Hardware suit, but when he actually throws in his lot with one of Alva's former pupils, someone who Alva had brought up no differently than what he did with Curtis, Hardware realized that Alva is a man who can literally put his hooks into anyone, even someone who hates Edwin Alva. And that's what happens here. Asher is a guy who is incredibly conflicted. There's a lot of talk in these two issues about how he was in some kind of an accident that crippled him, and that he has this huge beef with Edwin Alva, that he doesn't want anything to do with him. And he almost, I won't say necessarily leaps at the idea of taking down Edwin Alva once and for all, but at the same time, he also seems kind of hesitant because he realizes who Edwin Alva is. He recognizes that this guy has a dark past, that he has a history in Black Ops, in military intelligence, and that this guy has connections all over the globe, that if he wants something to happen, he can make it happen. And that's kind of why Asher is hesitant in his cooperation with Curtis. But in the end, Asher does does turn out to be a snake. He does actually try and turn on Curtis and even tries to use some Alva tech to render Hardware's suit, which is, once again, Edwin Alva's technology, trying to use it against Curtis. But Curtis is a smart guy. He actually refitted everything underneath the hood to where it's not even Edwin Alva's technology anymore. It's not something that Edwin Alva has control of. He can't remote pilot Curtis back to him while he's wearing the suit. He can't track him anymore. He can't shut down the suit anymore. Something I'm almost kind of surprised he never tried to do before, because Curtis makes it very clear that they had a back door into Curtis's Hardware battle armor. They could have probably shut it down if they wanted to, but they just never did. And now they've completely lost the ability to do so. It's actually one of those things I'm almost surprised this hasn't come up sooner. And I will say this is something I really appreciate about the current crop of Milestone comics, because they actually address issues that I had with the original series. I'm not saying this in a way to say that, oh, I didn't like the original comics. I love the original comics. But of course, when you love something and or are passionate about something, I think it's not out of line to also be able to criticize it and pick it apart. And I think Dennis Cowan would agree. As Dennis Cowan has said himself, they've had to update these things because there's just certain stuff that you could get away with in the 90s. And even then it was still kind of, some people like, that's kind of sketch. But it's stuff that just you really definitely can't get away with now. But I love how they're doing Curtis Metcalf. They are making him, for all intents and purposes, yeah, he is the super genius. Like, he doesn't have powers like Static. He's not an alien superhero like Icon or an alien superhero sidekick like Rocket. No, he's got to be smarter. He's got to be better. But at the same time, not making him Batman smart, which is so smart that it's ridiculous. Like, no, this guy is believable. He is believably intelligent. When you read his dialogue, you know that this guy is as smart as he says he is. You know this guy is capable of some crazy shit, but you know every once in a while he might get caught slipping. And we've seen that in these past, couple of issues. He's been caught slipping by the cops for that matter. But I love the commentary in this, the commentary of what happens when black people, black women especially, speak truth to power. I love what Brandon Thomas is doing with this series. I love the way they are setting this up, and they're making this, while yes, it's one of those corporate espionage deals just like it was before, but one of the things I appreciate, and especially about this current Milestone era, is that they are making Hardware a force to be reckoned with. But anyways, let me know what you thought about Hardware Season 1, number 3 and 4. Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.